Your Humanities Half-hour is brought to you by the Northern Marianas Humanities Council.
Hapaday, Tantero. Welcome to your Humanities Half-hour. I'm Catherine Perry, and today we're talking planning. Specifically, we are with the Office of Planning and Development and Director Kodep Ogumoro-Uludong. Kodep, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Kat.
You know, this is really a great opportunity to introduce the community for those that may know as to what it is your office does and how it could affect the quality of their life here in the Marianas. So there seems to be a lot that you guys have your fingers on here as far as what your responsibilities are. Give us the big picture. What is the role of the Office of Planning and Development?
Well, thank you very much, and Hafaday, Tiro, and greetings to your listeners. Thank you for having me. So the genesis of the Office of Planning and Development under the Office of the Governor was through the establishment of Public Law 20-20 in October of 2017. It was a bill that became law, the bill being authored by our now Lieutenant Governor Arnold Palacios, who at the time was Senate President. And Public Law 20-20 established not only the Office of Planning and Development, but it's a parallel advisory council known as the PDAC, which stands for the Planning and Development Advisory Council. And the goal, the goal of OPD and Public Law 20-20 was to essentially come up and create with input from all the relevant stakeholders, a comprehensive sustainable development plan that could help guide the CNMI into the future, long term. What is sustainable development? Sustainable development is meeting the needs of our people today without compromising the needs of our children in the future. And I know it sounds very flowery and high level, but that really informs the work that we've been doing over the last 2.5 years. It all started with me setting up the office and hiring a great team. And then from there, working to address the requirements of the law that established our office to help create and execute the plan, which, by the way, we're still in the process of formulating.
I was going to say, it sounds like a huge task, and not only that, like where are we now in the process, but it sounds like it's something that would continue to evolve over time. So where are we at right now?
Absolutely, and thanks for asking. So there's a process that we've put together to implement in terms of how we're going to get to that ultimate goal of this long-term plan. And like all plans, we are very aware and cognizant that it needs to be adaptive. So it's not a one and done final document, but it's a living document that adapts and changes to the current environment, but also informs our actions for the future. So the process has been, again, not only in embarking on this journey to create the plan, but to set up the framework and the office itself to be able to meet that goal. So what we've done is, once I was able to assemble my team, there are 5 of us, plus our great partners at the Capital Improvement Program Office, which was also placed under OPD. through the public law. But with the team, we then went about setting up our goals and objectives as far as, okay, how are we going to create this plan? So what we've done is we started by first putting together an idea of, okay, so we need to take stock of what we have now.
Right. Where are we starting
where
from?
Where are we at?
Yeah.
And that's what's commonly known as a baseline assessment.
Okay.
Get a good sense of where you're at.
Yeah.
What do our resources look like? What is the current status of our resources? Whether it's our built environment, our roads, our buildings, our parks.
So what would you say is our strength? Of course, we all know we have ways to improve, but having assessed our resources, are there any particular strengths or weaknesses that have stood out in looking at the results?
I'll reserve comment on just the status of our resources when we've actually completed and finalized our resources report, which in fact is in the process of going through fine-tuning, and we've been getting lots of feedback. But the resources report, as I mentioned, is the first step in getting us to being able to come up with that plan. So through this process of the resources report, which I really credit with my lead planner in terms of leading and compiling and working with our team to reach out to all the various partners. And we've been doing this over the last year and a half in terms of reaching out to mainly our public agency partners across the government to take stock of where our natural resources are, where our infrastructure is, both natural and built. What does our healthcare system look like? Now, of course, in planning, the idea is that there's a lot of collaboration and coordination. We're not the experts of everything. So what we do is we go out there and we tap the experts that reside in all these various agencies. Mm-hmm. And so what we've done is, through the course of the past year and a half, and not to mention the big elephant in the room, which was Super Typhoon U2, but what we did was we engaged with our partners and really got a sense of where the CNMI is at in terms of the status of these resources, like you were asking. So going back to Public Law 20-20, not only are we mandated to produce a comprehensive sustainable development plan, but we're also mandated to, through that process, coordinate and improve the coordination that is required to get a sense of this assessment. So it's not something that I just pick up the phone, send out a few emails on, and say, okay, where are we at on this? It's quite a lengthy and arduous process that's taken us, like I said, about 18 months to engage with our partners, get those coordinated groups together, and take stock. So right now, we've gone through several iterations of the resources report, getting lots of great feedback, not only from our local agency partners, but some of our federal partners as well. I've been able to take a look at this document. And I want to make a quick plug, and I'll be doing it throughout the show, of our website, which is opd.gov.mp, where you can find this report as well as many others that we've been involved in producing, and plans that we've been able to collect that have been published for the CNMI by pretty much most of our agencies.
And the nice thing is that if people go to that website, opd.gov.mp, they can also contribute to this resources report, review it, see what's there. And if you are aware of for example, a natural resource that is not included in this report, that's an important part of our future here in the Marianas, can make a note of that, and the office will include that, of course, in their consideration of what it is we're hoping to achieve.
Yes, absolutely. And so really, our website is really a great tool, not only for the community and our partners to get a good sense of what OPD is doing and has been doing, but it's also a great research tool in that we've been able to compile so many other resources from all 4 of our municipalities, Saipan, Tinian, Rota, and the Northern Islands.
Okay.
Some great plans and materials that we've been able to compile for the benefit of the community. So going back to the process, we've really been able to, through the mandate of 20-20, establish some great collaborative partnerships that are really required in order to get us moving towards where we want to be. And so again, the planning process that has been established and what we've been engaged in up until now has really been about gathering the data. And so now, once we're complete with that process, we then move into assessment of that data, to take a look at it, see if it really represents that snapshot, that point in time that it was collected, say 2020, as of 2020, what's been our carrying capacity for water or power, sewer, right? For example, CUC, a great partner. So through that planning process, we gathered the data, and now we're starting to shift over into assessing that data. And so that's going back to the resources report and what you had mentioned as far as our community being given the opportunity to take a look at the report that's been compiled and assembled, and then produce feedback. So OPD has been involved in getting feedback from our partners on the various sections of the resources report. And then following the assessment by all stakeholders, all relevant stakeholders, we then move into visioning. And
you got this huge smile on your face right now. I mean, this is the exciting part for me, is like, what vision do we have for our Marianas?
Exactly. And that's not something that, for example, OPD decides.
Yeah.
Right? It's a process that we extend out from the Office of the Governor. Mm-hmm. We take Governor Torres and Lieutenant Governor Palacios's priorities, which right now are very also focused on our recovery from U2 and Mangkut, as well as the current response and eventual recovery steps to COVID and the pandemic. So we then reach out to our partners in the community, citizens, to then help us envision, based off of existing good data, where we want to go into the future, right? And I know that we've spoken too about opportunities to really dive deep into what OPD does, but for the purposes of today's show, we'll keep it more high level and a little general.
Well, think of this as an introductory interview, and then later on, maybe when the plan comes out or the resources report comes out, we can dive a little bit deeper into that.
Absolutely.
You guys have so much going on.
Yeah, we do. And you're right, and thank you, and I look forward to that next opportunity. But going back to our process, we then, together with stakeholders, we then envision what it is that we want our community to look like. We want our islands to look like. And so OPD's job is to get all the relevant players to the table. So again, and I emphasize that we're still a young office. We're 2.5 years old, so a lot of work has gone into setting up the office and then embarking on our planning process. But we've reached a point now where we have a good handle on the public sector and the services that we currently offer, as well as the accomplishments to date, and not just what have you of the current administration, but over the long term, where have we come from, right? And that again also informs where we want to go, having a good sense of where we came from. So once we're able to do that visioning with all relevant stakeholders, then we start to map out where we want to go.
How long do you think this process will take if we have no more disasters? Let's throw that out there.
Well, and I'm glad you point that out, because we always have to be ready for the next disaster. And I know that the pandemic just came out of left field. And I'm also very happy and proud to say that our leadership has done a phenomenal job in keeping the rates very low and in being able to address any new cases. So, with that said, we have a timeline that we've been looking at, and we're really getting there. Actually, in my last briefing to members of the legislature on the House side, this was towards the end of February of this year. We had briefed the members of the legislature on the next steps for our planning process, which included community engagement. So that plan was to take our report that we had compiled to date and then start the process of engaging the community. And then COVID-19 hit. So we weren't able to go as planned out into the different precincts. We had already set up a framework of how we wanted to do outreach, precinct by precinct.
So what's the timeline we're looking at?
So we're looking at having a draft plan by this fall.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
So I was thinking maybe like next year or the year after. Okay,
well,
so
again,
that's something.
the first draft.
Right.
Yeah.
Again, it's a
work in progress.
Thank you for those words. Well, we're speaking today with Kodep Ogumoro-Uludong. He's the director of the Office of Planning and Development, and we'll be back with more after this break.
The COVID-19 pandemic continues to impact our daily lives, including our cultural institutions and individuals who contribute to the humanities. The Northern Marianas Humanities Council is pleased to announce a new grant program to respond to the needs of nonprofit organizations and individual participants in the humanities who need support through this difficult time. The COVID-19 Relief Grant provides up to $15,000 to eligible organizations and up to $10,000 to eligible individuals. Visit the Northern Marianas Humanities Council website at www.nmhcouncil.org/COVID-19 to learn more about this opportunity for relief. The Northern Marianas Humanities Council COVID-19 relief grants are made possible by funding from the U.S. Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security, or CARES Act, and the National Endowment for the Humanities.
Welcome back to your Humanities Half-hour. Kodep, you guys are doing a lot, but you're not necessarily reinventing the wheel. There are some more experienced agencies and organizations you're looking to kind of help give the Marianas some guidance. For example, the United Nations.
Thank you, Kathy. Yes, so with your reference to the United Nations is their Agenda 2030. Have you ever heard of Agenda 2030?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so Agenda 2030 is a global development plan that was arrived at in 2015. And by all UN member nations, 180 plus countries. They came together and through the input of the global community, put out what's known as the SDGs, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals.
Okay.
And these goals there are 17 goals, and the ultimate outlook for these goals is how to address global resources in a sustainable fashion for the benefit of people of the world, and to encourage and enhance prosperity for everybody.
All right.
And so there's 17 goals. And
I'm ready for them.
They cover the gamut of all sectors.
Okay.
Do you want me to just rattle them out?
You can, or if you prefer, you can pick ones that you feel are more applicable to us, whichever works for you.
They're all applicable.
All right.
That's why your show needs to be a little longer for OPD.
Okay, give us the United Nations vision.
Okay, so the vision is by addressing each of these 16 sectors plus one last final goal, we'll be able to lead our world into a sustainable future. So these goals cover everything from reducing poverty to addressing hunger, education, clean water, safe cities, gender equality, life both on land and underwater, climate change. What else do we have? Peace and justice, sustainable cities, responsible consumption, which ties right neatly to our solid waste management. And then finally, the 17th goal, which is about partnerships in order to attain those goals. And so OPD is really, not only do we have to address through this framework of the SDGs that we are now including in our comprehensive sustainable development planning efforts, but really is sort of the overall theme of how we're going to achieve them. And the only way is through partnerships. So that list that I rattled off, clearly it represents so many various sectors. And so what we've been doing over the course of the past year and a half is, again, through our mandate of coordination, we've been able to reach out and engage with the specific agencies that address each of these goals as they feed into our overall draft plan.
Okay.
Yeah. So just as an example, we have SDG number 3, which addresses good health and well-being. And so for each of these goals, there are various targets and indicators as to how we want to measure them. And then one of the targets for SDG number 3 is the reduction in our rate of non-communicable diseases, for example.
Which we have a very high rate.
We have an extremely high rate. And so our partners, we've been engaging with our partners at CHCC to help inform us of what our current statistics look like, how they're capturing those, and then what they, as the experts and the technical experts leading healthcare in our community, in the CNMI, how we work with other stakeholders to then guide their recommendations as to what do we envision for how we want our health to look over the long term. One example. Another example is SDG number 5, which is gender equality. So some of your listeners might be familiar with the Women's Affairs Office under the Office of the Governor, as well as the nonprofit CNMI Women's Association, CWA. Every year, for the past several years, they've held Women's Summit, their annual Women's Summit. And at the summit, we went in and we spoke about how can we envision what we want to be gender equality in our community, whether it means more opportunities for women, getting more women in the legislature, or whatnot. So those are just some very brief examples of how we're instituting the SDG framework into our comprehensive planning.
I do want to give you the opportunity to talk about something that's really a huge part of what you're doing, and that's related to disaster recovery. And it's been such a huge impact on our community. I don't think we have the time to really get into it, but what is the role of OPD in this?
Thank you, and that's a great question. OPD is one of only one component in a larger team that is executing disaster recovery strategies for the CNMI through the Office of the Governor. So we're a team member that really contributes towards the planning efforts surrounding disaster recovery. So what a lot of people also may not be aware of is that we're really still in the recovery process from both Typhoon Mangkhut and Super Typhoon Yutu. And when I say that we're still in that process, and that's because we're in the middle of actually continuing to package proposals to our various federal partners that have provided resources through the 2019 Disaster Recovery Act that made monies available to all disaster affected jurisdictions. So for the CNMI, again, those disasters were Mangkhut and Super Typhoon Yutu. So our role has been to provide support to our various partners that are part of this whole recovery process. So for example, OPD has been partnering closely with BECQ and the Department of Public Works to map out how we want to implement the funding that's been made available for solid waste management. Another area has been the Economic Development Administration under the U.S. Department of Commerce. Last year, through another partnership with the CNMI Department of Commerce and our very, very close partner, Secretary Mark Rebalaman, who also happens to be the chairman of our advisory council. Through that partnership, we were able to update the CNMI's comprehensive economic development strategy following the typhoons. And so what that strategy entailed was identifying specific needs and project areas where we could package proposals to EDA to help us with our economic recovery. Through that process, we're looking at potentially, if our proposals are successful, being able to rebuild certain sectors of our community, including Garapan Core, which many might know OPD has been leading through the Garapan Revitalization Task Force. Also, we have some very promising proposal that we hope would get funded by the EDA, and that is to assist with enhancing and rebuilding the Oliai Sports Complex, to also include a cultural park across the street at Civic Center. Another big lift for OPD has been the involvement and support of our planners, led by our lead planner, Erin Darrington, with hazard mitigation grants projects. So these are projects that are funded by FEMA to help us build back better and more resilient so that the next disaster that comes through doesn't affect us as much. And so again, it's really about making the CNMI more resilient to future disasters and just long term for the benefit of our people and communities.
I do want to plug your website one more time because this is going to be another opportunity for our listeners to participate in what you guys are doing. They can take the CNMI Resiliency Survey online, or as we mentioned before, they can go and look at the resources report and contribute to that. And the website is opd.gov.mp.
That's correct.
Right. Thank you so much. Any closing thoughts before we go?
Yes. Thank you again for this opportunity to share on some of the work that we're doing under the Office of the Governor. And in closing, really, through the foresight of the legislature and the governor's office in establishing the Office of Planning and Development, we've really been able to bring in an added layer of coordination amongst all the agencies to really benefit the public and enhance our service to the public. And that's really the aim of OPD. Again, under the Office of the Governor, OPD is mandated to produce this plan, which at the end of the day, when people ask, well, what's the point of your office? And really, the purpose of our office is, at the end of the day, to improve the quality of life for our people through proper planning, and the only way that can happen is by getting everybody to the table.
We've been chatting today with Kodep Ogumoro-Uludong. He's the Director of the Office of Planning and Development. Kodep, thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Kathy.
This has been your Humanities Half Hour. I'm Catherine Perry.
This program was supported by a We the People grant awarded to the Northern Marianas Humanities Council from the National Endowment for the Humanities. Any views, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily represent those of the National Endowment for the Humanities or the Northern Marianas Humanities Council.